You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host, Keith Angle, on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Hey, everybody, it's Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk. And tonight we're TGI Sports Talk College Football Huddle. It's our inaugural show. Sorry we're a little bit late. Had a last-minute work obligation that popped up. Really good news at the day job, but we're here and we're live, and we'll be here every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to talk about the world of college football. Just to give you guys a little bit of I guess, preliminary look at what we're going to do. I'm not sure if the show will be an hour or an hour and a half yet. We'll see how it goes. I got a lot of content to talk about each week. I think Wednesdays is a good day to do it because we still got the last week's games are kind of fresh in our minds. All the polls are out. When we get the playoff time, the playoff rankings will be out. And then we still got a few days before the games start for that week. So I'm really excited. I'm a big college football fan. I'm excited to launch this new show. We're going to have some special contributors. Hello, Dave Guyette. How are you today? Or tonight, excuse me. We don't usually go live at night, but we will be now. We'll have some special contributors coming on. I've already got Larry Sorensen lined up, who is the color analyst for Wake Forest University football. He'll be talking about the ACC and a little bit about the Big Ten because he's got some connections there. We've got some people with some Southeast Conference affiliations, and we're looking for other people to come on and talk about the rest of the conferences, the Power Five and the other conferences. One of my favorite conferences, guys, is the AAC. So we'll talk about not just the Big Five, but some of the other stronger conferences as well. I'm a big believer in the underdog and in college football, especially, and in life. I'm a Miami Hurricane fan in all total, what do I talk about? Transparency. And that's for good and bad. I've always been that. College football, I've kind of jumped around a lot in my life. I landed on Miami as my stepson did his undergraduate there, and my wife and he are big Hurricane fans, and I kind of jumped on board. There's been times where I was a Notre Dame fan, depending on who the coach was. Charlie Weiss was there. I was a fan. So anyway, we're going to talk about all things college football. We'll dive into your comments. If you're watching the show live and you want to comment and bring up a topic, we'll do our best to tackle it that night. If you're watching it later on, I hope you'll feel free to comment on the topics that we bring up that night and topics you'd like us to talk about in the coming weeks. I'll be happy to do that. And share this show, guys. Like it, share it. Go to TGI Sports Talk and like and share TGI Sports Talk. And again, I want to thank all the groups that will allow me to share this to them. And because they're a big part of what we do. I mean, I can't get the views, I can't get the exposure for myself and Northeast Streaming Sports, where we're airing as well, by the way. I forgot to bring that up in the beginning. I'm a little rattled being late tonight. But I want to thank Northeast Streaming Sports for the opportunities that they've given TGI Sports Talk over these last, it's got to be 10 months or so now, which it's been a great time, and we've been growing and having a lot of fun. So welcome TGI Sports Talk tonight. And Mac, Linda, I'm having a brain problems tonight, man. Long day. Glad to have you all here. To the groups, again, thank you. You guys make it special. Joined a bunch of more college football groups. So I'm excited to get some new viewers and new people commenting and participating in the show. I like viewer participation. So if you guys have comments, feel free to bring them up. So tonight's first show, we're going to talk a little bit about Bobby Bowden's legacy. Bobby Bowden was a tremendous football coach, tremendous person. and we'll talk about his legacy here a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about the NIL, the realignment, playoff expansion. We'll try to get into the preseason top 25 a bit. And we're talking right now about what to expect on the show for the weeks to come. So, guys, lots to cover, and again, this will be a work in progress, and any suggestions, constructive or otherwise, are always welcome on my show. I might shoot you down because I do have the right to, I do have the right of first refusal on everything. Just an FYI. All right, let's get it going, guys. Let's start with our first topic of the night. We're going to start. Let me find the right banner. Bobby Bowden. Sad to see Bobby Bowden pass away this past weekend at 91 years old. Bobby, best known as the coach at Florida State from 1976 to 2009. Just a tremendous, tremendous football coach. There's not enough things that you can say. There's not enough platitudes you can put on Bobby Bowden. For a time, a short time, he was the number one winning coach in college football history. When Joe Paterno had some wins taken away from him, probably they shouldn't have happened. So Bobby has dropped back down to number two, but that's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, Bobby Bowden's legacy is amazing. Again, he took a program. He left West Virginia, where he'd spent 5 or 6 years, and had a very good West Virginia team, very competitive. It wasn't really a huge step up to go to Florida State, but Bobby did a great job building that program. What did he go to? 28 straight bowl games from 1982 to 2009. 28 straight bowl games. And he was 21, 10, and 1 in those bowl games with a couple of national championships, including an undefeated season in 1999. What's Dave got to say here? Keep the show going another 10 months. I hope to keep it going longer than that, Dave, but thank you. Dave Guyette's a very loyal viewer here of TGI Sports Talk, all my shows, and of Northeast Streaming Sports. Dave participates in a lot of the shows, so thank you, Dave. Back to Bobby. His big breakthrough was 1993. Was the first of his 2 national titles. In Florida State's second season in the ACC, they were an independent for many years before 1993, and always were competitive. I can remember some really good teams before 93, but Bobby couldn't really get over the hump and win that national championship. But he did that in 1993 with Charlie Ward as his quarterback. They went 8-0 in the conference, and they lost to number 2 Notre Dame, who will open this season, by the way, interestingly enough, against each other on Labor Day weekend. We'll talk a little bit about that down the road. He had the perfect season, I said in 1999. Won the national championship over Michael Vick and Virginia Tech in the Sugar Bowl. In a very, very competitive game up until the end. They reeled off 17 unanswered points. He became the all-time winningest coach, as I said. For a while, Joe Paterno had lost some wins, but again, that was probably not done correctly, and Paterno was given back his wins, and so Bowden has a very strong second place, 377 lifetime wins, 14 consecutive finishes in the top 5. He was 5-6 in his first season, 1976. That's the last sub 500 team he had. 14 consecutive top 5 finishes. I'm not sure how many schools could actually say that. I think the second longest streak, if I remember, was USC in the early 2000s when Pete Carroll was there. Miami maybe in the late 80s, mid to late 80s and early 90s, and maybe Oklahoma. way back when. Captured 12 straight ACC titles. And he'd play anybody, anywhere. When he was at West Virginia, not a great job then. It's a good job now. But, he would play LSU. And this is what he got to Florida State. He'd go to LSU and play them. He'd go to Nebraska and play them. He'd go to Pittsburgh and play them. He played Notre Dame. He played Ohio State. He'd play everybody. They had a great rivalry with Florida. One thing that's getting lost in this whole realignment mess is some of these traditional rivalries, as I've said on some of my other shows, are going by the wayside. Florida teams used to all play each other all the time. Miami, Florida, Florida State would all play each other every year. Doesn't happen anymore. But I don't want to get off that. Just stay on Bobby Bowden for the moment. Had a great rivalry with Steve Spurrier. Steve Spurrier used to call them, what did he call them? I think it was like No Shoes University or something. It was awesome. But Bobby Bowden was also a mentor to a lot of kids. Warwick Dunn comes to mind. His mother was a police officer who was killed in line of duty. And, he was at a crossroads when Bowden was the coach of Florida State. And Dunn wasn't sure what he wanted to do. And Bobby Bowden took Warwick Dunn under his wing and pointed him in the right direction, not just in football, but in life. And Warwick Dunn became a great college football player and a really, really good NFL player as well, and actually won the 2004 Walter Payton Award. Bobby Bowden's legacy goes far beyond wins and losses. He was a great coach, and in my mind, even a better person and a better man. So rest in peace, Bobby Bowden. You did a great job. And Florida State, well, I was a big Bobby Bowden fan. I wasn't a big Florida State fan. They've not reached the heights that Bobby brought them to since they left. Or since he left, I'm sorry. Bobby, by the way, Bobby also sired a few pretty good coaches himself, and Terry Bowden, who coached at Auburn, I think might be at Tulane still now. His son Tommy had coached at Clemson prior to Dabo Swinney and his great run now. So some great bloodlines there. Bobby Bowden, a good football coach, a great football coach, a great husband and father, a great human being, and his legacy is going to go on for a long time. Great job, Bobby. Rest in peace. Back to some cheerier notes, I guess, some cheerier notes. The NIL. So I'm still, the whole thing with the name, image, and likeness rulings where players can now profit from lending their name and their likeness to businesses. It's a slippery slope. I still think there could be some good. Again, as I've said before, these kids, or the colleges, have made billions of dollars on the backs of these kids. And the kids, can't even take a plane ride home when their grandfather passes away or something like that. So for them to be able to profit, I see some positive in that. I mean, yeah, they're getting an education, yes, but and I don't take that lightly, but I still think there's some positives to be had here. But the negatives scare me as well. The fact that the NCAA, some of these leagues and colleges where they don't have The states may not have regulations in place yet. They're letting the colleges kind of police themselves. And we know how dangerous that can be. The NCAA has said it can't be used as a recruiting tool. Well, it's going to be. The NCAA has said players can't take endorsement deals based on incentives. So, for instance, Nikhil King from De'Aaron King. My God, what a day. De'Aaron King, the Miami University quarterback, back for I guess, a sixth season because he was able to, I think he was a redshirt. I think he was a fifth year senior last year, and he gets a sixth year because of COVID. Surprisingly decided to come back, but he's got a huge endorsement deal with the Florida Panthers now. The first athlete, by the way, to get an endorsement deal from a professional sports team. Florida Panthers hockey team is sponsoring him. Now, they can't, for instance, give him a sponsorship that has an escalating scale based on his performance of touchdowns or wins and losses or whatever it might be. So that's a good thing if it's enforced. So again, you can't use it as a recruiting tool, but it will happen. Yeah, I mean, these boosters at these big schools, at all schools, they're the people that are going to be giving these kids sponsorship money. The sponsors are the alumni are the guys with the car dealerships and the big businesses around town in Tuscaloosa and Miami and Oklahoma, Lincoln, Nebraska. The guys who are going to be giving these kids endorsement money are going to be the very guys who are alumni and have ties with the programs. It's just going to happen. So I do think it might level the playing field. Maybe some guy who is going to be a third or fourth stringer at Alabama and is happy to do that because he could get a shot down the road at the pros just because he's an Alabama grad. Well, played on the Alabama football team. Maybe he'll go to Coastal Carolina. Maybe he'll go to Liberty. Maybe he'll go to Central Florida instead because he can be a starter there or compete to be a starter there and maybe get some endorsement money that he wouldn't get being a four-string wide receiver in Alabama or at Alabama. I don't know yet. I don't like to be wishy-washy. I usually am very opinionated one way or the other. This, I'm a little wishy-washy on. Because again, now it's filtering down into the high school ranks. High school players cannot take these endorsements as of yet. Guaranteed the lawsuits around the corner for that. But we've already seen a case where a recruit to Ohio State quarterback has got $1 million deal in place, and he's skipping his senior in high school. He will not be playing, and he'll be going to Ohio State University. He's getting this money as a high school recruit. See a slippery slope here, guys. You think these kids are going to spend the money wisely? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I wish I did. So this is going to be an interesting story to follow as we go through, and we'll get a comprehensive list here maybe for the coming weeks. And I was looking for one today, and I really couldn't find one. I know De'Aaron King has got a big deal with the Panthers, and there's some other players that have signed some big deals, and we'll take a look at that. But I didn't change my banner. I need a producer on this show. Does anybody want to apply for the job? So there we are. We're talking about the NIL impact, good or bad. I'm still up in the air, guys. Give me your comments when you see this. Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Fire away. Can't shoot at me this time because unlike most topics, I don't have a definitive opinion yet. Let's move on. Our next topic is going to be, if I can find it, we're going to talk about realignment. I can't seem to find my banner. Got too many banners up here, guys. Nick Saban, we'll talk about him in a little bit. Anyway, we'll just talk about realignment. Realignment. Oklahoma and Texas officially have announced, as you well know now, they're going to the SEC in 2025. I highly doubt it's going to take that long. It's going to be very acrimonious in the Big 12 until it does happen. So I think it'll happen sooner. Do I think this is a good thing? No, I didn't think the realignment that got kicked off in 2012 and the Big 10 initiated that by bringing in Nebraska from the Big 12. The Big 12 got hurt badly last time we realigned. The Big 10 started it off by stealing away Nebraska. And then Texas A&M went to the Southeast Conference. And Colorado went to the Pac-12. So for the second time, the Big 12 takes it right in the shorts, losing Oklahoma and Texas, only the two biggest programs in the conference, to the SEC. So what happens from here? I don't know. The Big 12, they've got to make some decisions. Do they put together some kind of alliance with say, the Pac-12? Do some of those schools go to the Pac-12? Colorado made a lot of sense last time for the Pac-12. Colorado and Utah, the last time Pac-12 realigned. But does it make as much sense to take in Oklahoma State or some of the Texas schools? I don't know. So the Pac-12's got some decisions to make. They could go raid the AAC. I love the AAC. Most underrated conference in the country. To me, we got a Power 5, as they like to say, but I think it's a Power 6. These schools can compete with anybody, the Cincinnatis, the Houstons, the Central Floridas. Tulsa's got a great program. Memphis has got a good program. And I really think with expansion, these teams will be on a more level playing field with the big boys. We'll see. The SECs of the world are trying to put a stop to that. They're trying to monopolize, and they may want to build a 32-team league by some sources. But what's the Big 12 going to do? Again, they could look to go to the AAC and steal some of their better programs, but I think it's more likely the AAC now is in a really good position to maybe poach a couple of those schools. TCU would be a great fit. Iowa State would be a great fit for the AAC. Now, when I talk about all of this, I'm not necessarily in favor of this realignment. I'm not in favor of it at all. I think it's bad for college football. What I'm talking about is realities of what's to come. I'd like nothing more to see than to see the old conferences put back together, and we get some of the regional rivalries back together, some of the conference rivals and interconference rivalries that we can't see anymore because these big super leagues, 14, 16, and maybe more teams, you can't schedule great out-of-conference teams or games anymore. Notre Dame can't play Miami year after year like they used to. Michigan can't play Notre Dame every year anymore. Not to mention Nebraska and Oklahoma gone. So I am not for this realignment. I hate it. I think it's bad for college football. The regional rivalries are what makes college football great. And you can sell those regional rivalries on a national basis, but not when you break them up, and not when you got schools playing in the Southeast Conference that are from Texas and Oklahoma. Not when you got teams in the Big 12 from West Virginia. You got teams in the Big 10 from New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And you're liable to have schools in the Pac-12 from the Midwest and Texas. So I think it's good, no. But you're going to see more. The ACC's got to do something. They're going to get left behind. The Big Ten's got to do something. Again, they kicked off this realignment the last time. And now they're left behind. The only team in that league who really can compete for the playoff year after year is Ohio State. They may have to go take some of these teams. Maybe they go back to the Big 12 and take the best teams from there. Hasn't gone well. The teams that they've brought into during realignments for the Big 10 have not done well. Nebraska's been off the map since they went to the Big 10. I think it's time. If we're going to continue to do this, I think it's really time for the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, who is loaded with really good football teams, to just go overboard now and maybe bring in Oklahoma State. Maybe they have some kind of big merger with the rest of the Pac-12 or the top of the Big 12. Somebody's going to get left standing, you know. This game of musical chairs always ends up with somebody in the outside looking in. We lost the Big East the last time this happened. What league's going to go by the wayside this time? Maybe it's the Pac. Maybe it's going to be the Big 12. They're going to have a hard time keeping that Power 5 designation, as it were. Once Texas and Oklahoma, their two big dogs, are gone. They have a hard time competing for playoff spots now. Oklahoma's been there a few times, but they don't have a competitor there year after year. Neither is the Pac-12. Until there's expansion of the playoff, are these leagues going to be able to stay healthy and compete? Or are more of these teams going to move to leagues where they think they can get better exposure? Now, the flip side of it is the SEC, while you think, they get stronger, they're going to wrap up all the playoff spots. And if they expand to 12, they're going to have 6 of the teams. Maybe not, because you're getting better teams in there. They're going to beat up on each other. And maybe they won't have as good a chance to get multiple teams in the 4-team playoff, or as many teams as one might think in a 12-team playoff. So the SEC may think this is a good thing, and it's all about television money. We know what this all is about. I mean, ESPN's very likely to get themselves sued. They're in a pissing match right now with the Big 12 and the AAC a little bit, because they're about to come into a big contract in a few years with the SEC. And they have been reportedly possibly involved in negotiations with these teams, Texas and Oklahoma, for instance, about moving from the Big 12 to the SEC. ESPN should not be putting their nose in these types of decisions. So I don't think this realignment is going to be good for anybody. And the problem is, it won't stop here. As much as an old guy like me wanted to go back to the way it was, it's not going to happen. So there's going to be more movement. Again, if they're going to go to the Texas and Oklahoma are going to the SEC before 2025. I can guarantee it. Now, the good thing is if that happens, that means the television contracts have been blown up and other scheduling conflicts have been blown up to allow that to happen, which also will get us to a 12-team, at a minimum, playoff faster than 2025 as well. It's the TV contracts that are going to hold that up. Well, if TV contracts get blown up so these teams can leave earlier, then quite possibly we'll see a 12-team playoff sooner as well. So that's the only good side of this that I can see. What do you guys think? I just think it's a dangerous place for us to be going here. In NCAA football. And again, it's going to affect other sports as well. Don't forget Notre Dame in all this. People think Notre Dame needs to get into a conference. I don't know that they do. They've still got their own TV contract, which is why people want them to join their conferences in the first place. All their Olympic sports are part of the ACC. Only football remains an independent. So all the Olympic level sports play in the ACC, as we said, and Notre Dame's got a quasi relationship with the ACC to play X amount of games a year. But last year's the only year that they were a full-fledged member, and that was because of COVID, and Notre Dame wasn't going to be able to have a football season because they couldn't get a schedule. The ACC to me should have been played hardball a bit harder with Notre Dame last year. Don't let them in unless they commit to joining full time, but not to be. What else we got, guys, we want to talk about today? Let's take a quick look. And I'm not a big fan, by the way, of preseason polls, but we got to look at them because they are what they are. To me, we should play at least a couple of games and then have a poll, because invariably somebody really good is at the bottom. And when we're talking about 4 teams getting into a playoff, those teams that are at, the back of the late or the mid 20s or not ranked at all right now are going to have a hard time moving up the rankings. So many teams to pass. But rankings are what makes football go. That and betting. So the top 25, we're going to look at the coaches poll. And I'm going to talk about some of the teams that I like and some of the teams that I don't. Overrated, underrated. The top 4, no big surprise. We've been looking at these same 4 or 5 teams here in the top for a while. Top 5. Alabama, number 1. Clemson, number 2. Oklahoma, number 3. Ohio State, number 4. And Georgia, number 5. Let's just take a look at those teams. Alabama, Nick Saban, by the way, since we're talking about Nick Saban. Huge contract extension. 5 years, $84 million. He'll be 78 years old when this contract is up. Nick Saban going to coach 5 more years? Probably could. He's a CEO there. It's not like he doesn't coach, but he's, is there pressure? Sure, but you're Nick Saban and you're making a bunch of money and you've already won a bunch of national championships. So how much pressure can there really be? Not pressure like you and I have going to work every day and having to perform day in and day out. Anyway, Alabama, they just reload every year. They lost a lot of talent last year in Waddle and Devontae Smith at wide receiver and Mac Jones, my new favorite quarterback at several of the important skill positions, obviously. But Alabama continues to reload, and I have no doubt they're going to do it this year. Clemson, Dabo Swinney, I cannot say enough about the job he's done at Clemson, not just, again, as a football coach, but another similar. He reminds me a lot of Bobby Bowden. He really does. In his approach to the game, the way he built the culture he's built at Clemson. A little surprised somebody doesn't take exception to the culture there, but to me, it's a good, healthy, wholesome culture. And I give Bobby or Dabo Swinney all the credit in the world. Plus, he's winning. I'm pretty sure Clemson will compete for one of those 4 playoff spots this year. Oklahoma, I think Lincoln Riley's got a great shot of getting back to the playoff, and he's got a great shot at winning a national championship this year. He's got Shane Rattler back at quarterback with a year under his belt, learned from some of the growing pains he had last year, and I think Oklahoma will be right there at the end. Ohio State, I'm not so sure. They lose Fields. They lose a lot of other talented guys on both sides of the football. Now, again, it's another program that reloads every year. It doesn't rebuild, it reloads. But I think they're going to have a much tougher time this year. And I think the Big Ten is going to be better this year overall. We had Indiana come out of nowhere last year. Don't think they'll be as strong as they were last year, but who knows? Wisconsin's going to be better. Penn State's going to be better. Michigan most likely will be better this year under Jim Harbaugh than they've been, certainly than they were last year. Michigan State can't help but be better. So I think Ohio State's going to have their problems. Georgia, Kirby Smart's a great recruiter. Maybe the best recruiter in the country. That's saying a lot when you're talking about the Alabamas, the Clemson, the Oklahomas of the world. But he can't seem to win the big games. So he's got that label, and he's going to be motivated to change that label. And I think Georgia with JT Daniel is really primed to have a big year. I think their defense has improved. And I think they're likely to see Alabama in that SEC championship game. And maybe both of them get to the playoff again, as they did a couple of years ago. But I think only one of them is going to get there. And I think Georgia might be being undersold a little bit because of those struggles that Kirby Smart's had in the playoffs. Or big games, I should say. The second 5, Texas A&M. Jumbo Fisher finally got this team over the hump last year after a rough start, struggling start. But they weathered the storm, and they had a really good season. And he may be primed. Lost their starting quarterback. I like Kellen Mond a lot. But Jumbo Fisher's a good football coach, and he's built a good team here. They could be being slept on a little bit at 6. Notre Dame, by all intents and purposes, they're reloaded and ready to go too. They got some talent back at some of the skill positions, but what I think people are forgetting is how good and underrated a quarterback Ian Book was. I think Notre Dame's overrated this year. Iowa State, Matt Campbell might be the best coach in all of college football in my mind. He's not long for that program. I thought he might have moved on this year, but he didn't. And Iowa State's going to be dangerous as long as he is there leading that program. North Carolina looked like world beaters for a while last year. Mac Jones has done a really great job in rebuilding this program for the second time in his career. But I think North Carolina, for all their hype, and Sam Howell, I think, will be a Heisman Trophy candidate for sure. Probably potentially a finalist. But I think North Carolina is a little overrated here in this spot. You know, the ACC is still a tough league. Clemson's the top dog, and I don't think they're ready to take that leap to that echelon yet. Cincinnati's at number 10. I talked a lot about the AAC earlier in the show. I talk about them a lot on all my shows, and you'll hear a lot of the AAC talk this year on this show. Very underrated conference. Really good teams in that conference. Cincinnati being the best of the best. And they bring back a lot of good players. I can see Cincinnati again trying to get into that playoff and sneak in front of one of those group of 5 teams. Going to take some doing. Probably going to need to be undefeated, but they've got the horses to do it. Florida. Dan Mullen's another guy that, Florida is always loaded with talent, but they've lost their quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the country last year in Trask. Hard to replace that kind of talent. Florida struggled on defense mightily last year. They were terrible. A lot of teams in college football were bad on defense. I talked about it week in and week out on my Sunday show. Tune in on Sundays, 9 a.m. Eastern time for our Stream of Consciousness show, where we talk about all things sports. And you guys are asked to participate heavily. Oregon, again, the Pac-12, I don't know how good they are out there. Oregon comes in number 12 in the coaches poll. LSU, horrible year last year. They did play better in the second half, but off to a horrible start. Ed Orgeron has got his work cut out for him here in this tough SEC. But Louisiana State has a history of bouncing back. They don't stay down for long. Southern California, can't get excited. Can't get excited about any of these Pac-12 teams. I really can't. Wisconsin, bad year last year. Again, maybe COVID was the issue for a lot of these teams that had down years. Is Wisconsin going to bounce back? Big Ten, I think will be stronger this year, and I do think Wisconsin will be one of those teams that's better. Miami, where my heart lays. I might be a bit prejudiced. Miami's had some good football teams the last 5-6 years and some middling teams. And the good teams that they've had have not been able to beat really good teams because the offense just wasn't good enough. Thought that changed last year with De'Aaron King. He played great football. But Miami could not beat the really good teams. They got to get over that hump this year, or there could be some disappointed alumni there in Miami again. So who knows? But Miami's got a good team. They could be. I think they could be better than their 16th ranking. They could also just as easily disappoint us all. Indiana ranked 17th based off the strength of their year last year. Again, they didn't play all the best teams. They competed against Ohio State. That was their toughest game on their schedule. They beat up on Rutgers. Yes, they beat Penn State, but Penn State was awful. I see Indiana being a good team, but not top 10 material this year. Maybe not even number 17. They could be overrated in this spot. Iowa's always got a good team, but it's nothing to get excited about. Kurt Ferentz is a great coach. Very consistent winner. But not able to win big games again. Texas. Say what you want about Steve Sarkisian, but he's a good offensive mind. He's had his problems. He had his problems at USC. But he's been the head coach of two big programs now, Washington, USC, and he had a lot of time to get his act back together. He spent a lot of time working under the best in Nick Saban. And Texas at number 19, I think, is being undersold. I think Texas is ready to take that step back into the upper echelon of college football. And I think they're going to surprise some people this year. Penn State at 20. This looks like a reputation pick to me. They could surprise me, but James Franklin was rumored to be on his way out of there last year, but he's back for another year. And Penn State, God, you know what? Football's better when Penn State's better. A lot of sports. I talk about this a lot as well. Every sport's got teams, has teams in the leagues where they're better. The league is better when those teams are better, right? Baseball's better when the Yankees and the Red Sox are good. The Dodgers are good. Basketball's better when the Knicks are good and the Lakers are good and the Celtics are good. College football is better when Alabama's good and Notre Dame is good and Penn State is good. It's just better for the game because these teams are polarizing. You either love them or you hate them. Penn State could surprise, but I feel like this is a reputation pick here. Washington, don't know enough about Washington, but again, I'm not in love with that Pac-12. Somebody's got to run the table and do it convincingly out there to probably get the playoff. Oklahoma State, after Texas and Oklahoma, they're probably the biggest dog in the league. Got off to a great start last year. Their defense played tremendous, but eventually their offensive issues came up and bit them. Louisiana Lafayette makes it at number 23. I love it. And Coastal Carolina at number 24. Two great stories in college football. Coastal Carolina and Liberty last year were the two big underdog stories of the year. And I think Coastal Carolina will be very good again this year. I don't, again, think they're going to push top 10 status, but you never know. And then you got Mississippi. And you got Mississippi at number 25. Now, again, these preseason rankings, what do they really mean? There's teams that aren't ranked that are probably going to make some noise. Northwestern had a really good run last year. Pat Fitzgerald's a great coach. They're not ranked. Arizona State, a lot of people are high on them coming into this year. There's some issues that the NCAA is looking at out there. A little surprising to see Herm Edwards involved in that type of investigation, but it is what it is. And we'll see. If they play, if they don't get sanctions and the distractions aren't too much, they could be a surprise in the Pac-12 next year. Nobody knows what to expect out of Auburn. We never do. Gus Malzahn is gone. And we'll see what he can do at Central Florida. Who else is in here? Liberty. Great year last year. We'll see if they're able to kind of continue that momentum. TCU, Michigan. Jim Harbaugh's back and humbled. Had to take a pay cut. Make big changes in his coaching staff. Can he finally get Michigan over the hump? He hasn't had a bad run there. He had a bad year last year. It was awful. Yeah, but he's averaged 9 wins a year in his tenure there. So it's not like they've been terrible. Central Florida with Gus Malzahn, I think it's a great fit. I don't think Gus Malzahn was ever going to be competing for national championships at Auburn. But Gus Malzahn's a good offensive coach, and Central Florida is a great landing place for him. Then you got your Boise States. UCLA could surprise now with Chip Kelly with some seasons under his belt, getting his system up and running. But there is some talk that maybe the rest of the league is caught up with that system that he ran so well at Oregon. So that's a quick look at the top 25 and a couple of teams that aren't in the top 25. And we'll see how that hashes out. What else is going on in the world of college football, guys? I got no comments today. You guys aren't helping me out at all. That's okay. Let's just see if there's other news we want to chat about. I do want to talk about some of the big games that'll be starting and we'll be talking about in the coming weeks. The first week, we're only 3 weeks away from the start of the season, guys. Baylor ends up with no punishment from the NCAA for their sex assault issues that end up getting Briles fired years back, quite a few years back now. talked about Alabama being the number one, a runaway number one in the coaches poll. The expansion of the playoff, 5 years off. Let's see what we got here. Do I have this up here? Yeah, we don't want to look at that yet. Oh, there's what I was looking for earlier. We always find it when it's too late, right? The playoff. We're still at 4 teams. I don't like it. I can't wait till we get at least 12. I still think it should be 16. I've talked about this in some vlogs and on some of my other shows. The NCAA could easily, and last time I brought this up, I had some guy wanted to sue me for copyright infringement. I mean, come on. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think I counted wrong. Just look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 leagues in FBS, NCAA Division I football. 10 leagues. 16-team playoff. All of those conference champions go. I don't care if you decide it by tournaments or championship games or regular season champions. I don't care. And 6 wild cards. This way the Coastal Carolinas and the Liberties and the Cincinnatis. I'm looking at these teams that won this division last year. Let's just look at last year's results. Here would have been my 16-team playoff from last year. Cincinnati from the AAC. Notre Dame and Clemson from the ACC. I'll get back to some others in a minute. Iowa State and Oklahoma from the Big 12. Ohio State and Indiana from the Pac-10. Northwestern from the Pac-10. I'm up to 8. Marshall. Marshall, I believe, would have gone from the Conference USA. 9 teams. The independents will have to look at separately. They're going to have to join a league. Notre Dame would fall into that bracket this year, by the way, of course. Buffalo, 10. San Jose State, undefeated last year, 11. USC, 12. Alabama, Texas A&M, Florida, and Georgia, 16. And Coastal Carolina. I got to take somebody out. In this scenario, I'm dropping one of those SEC teams. Most likely Georgia. There's my 16 teams. Still got a gripe at the back half. Georgia wants to complain you're the 4th best team in your league. And now you're giving the Liberties. You're giving the San Jose States. You're giving the Cincinnatis. You're giving some of these other teams a shot. I don't care if they get blown out in the first round by Alabama. I don't. What I want to see is that 1 in a million game where Coastal Carolina knocks off Notre Dame or knocks off Alabama in the first round. That's what makes the NCAA tournament in basketball so exciting. Now, probably the Blue Bloods will win out in the end. And what does it matter whether I watch Coastal Carolina get blown out by Alabama or whether I watch Notre Dame get blown out by Alabama? So NCAA, think about what you're doing. think about this 16-team playoff instead of the 12-team. Although the 12-team is better, and I pray to God that we don't have to wait till 2025 for it. We're going to have a cluster, you know what, this year when we get trying to pick 4 teams. Let's take a quick look at one last thing, guys, before we go for it. We're going to wrap up our first week show. Just about an hour's time. And we're going to talk about these topics and more going forward. There's a lot to talk about in college football every week. Some of these preseason, when we get into the games and having to wrap up, look at the results of the week before and the previews of some games coming up, we'll probably maybe have to go an hour and a half. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. But real quick, let's take a quick look at I actually got off my schedule. So, oops. Here we go. So the opening week is Saturday the 28th. Not a lot of big games in there. Biggest game of the week is probably, Nebraska and Illinois. Who's getting excited about that? Usually there's a couple of good games kickoff week, but not this week. But now we get into Labor Day weekend, and you've got some great matchups. On Thursday, the 2nd, you've got some really good games. Why is there so many games on Thursday the 2nd? Amazing. A lot of games in general for a Thursday night. Boise State plays UCF. Again, when you're outside the group of 5, this is a good matchup. And probably the best game of the night, Ohio State and Minnesota, in a very early big game, I think, in the Big Ten. Minnesota had a rough year last year, but they had a great year the year before. Love their coach, Flesh. And a big test for Ohio State early on at Minnesota. I'm going to be excited about that game. On Friday, you got a bunch more games. You got North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and an early ACC matchup that is probably important. Again, North Carolina is going to be ranked pretty high and is going to have to defend that ranking pretty early at Virginia Tech, which is not an easy place to play in Blacksburg, folks. That's the big game on Friday. Then you get to Saturday, and you've got some big games. Michigan State, Northwestern, 2 teams that need to get off to a good start in the Big Ten. Penn State, Wisconsin, 2 teams looking to rebound in the Big Ten. Yeah, it's not going to be good for the guy who loses that game. Alabama and my Miami Hurricanes. At Alabama at Miami. Can David slay Goliath there? Maybe. Tough place to play in Miami. And the Heat, well, Alabama's used to the Heat. Tough spot for Miami, too, to get started with Alabama. Get Indiana, Iowa. Ought to be a good matchup. Notre Dame, Florida State. Florida State, I think that game's on Monday night, by the way, or Sunday. Let me see. That's on Sunday night. Florida State, Notre Dame. Historically, they've had some great matchups. Florida State's been down for a while now, as we talked about when we were talking about the great Bobby Bowden. But it'll still be an intriguing game. But the most intriguing game of that weekend, Clemson, likely number 2 in the country, playing number 5, at least in the coaches poll, Georgia. Week 1, interconference game. That'll be live probably on ABC. Let's see, can I tell you? Yep, live on ABC that Saturday night. It's on a neutral field, but the game's in Charlotte. Supposedly half the stadium's going to be Georgia, half will be Clemson. We'll see. Big matchup. Week 1, I'll call it week 1 of the college football season. Tone setters. There's some tone setter games this first week, guys. Some teams that need to get off to a good start, as I said, because they had bad years last year, like Penn State and Wisconsin. Teams who want to prove themselves that last year wasn't a fluke, like Indiana. Teams that want to make the jump, like Miami against Alabama. Teams that want another team that wants to prove that they deserve the high ranking they've got in North Carolina, traveling to Virginia Tech. And, of course, that Clemson, Georgia matchup. Guys, that's going to wrap it up for me tonight. We'll have more next week. I will have on to talk about the ACC and probably that Georgia-Clemson matchup, and we'll talk about Wake Forest and the rest of the teams in that ACC. We'll talk some Big Ten football. We'll have more news of preseason developments in the NCAA. And my guest will be color commentator for the Wake Forest University Demon Deacons, Larry Sorensen. So we'll talk with Larry and cover more topics next week right here on TGI Sports Talk College Football Huddle. We'll be back Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Northeast Streaming Sports. I hope you guys will join me then. Keith Engel, you guys have a great rest of your week.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, you guys any